I met her in a bar here in the CBD. It was a business networking event, and it was 2 years ago. We were introduced by mutual friends, and hit it off going really well. We had probably chatted for about an hour. She was really bubbly, outgoing, all that sort of good stuff. And like one of these typical business networking events, at the end of it, we swap business cards. And following week, I dropped her a quick line, and we hooked up on LinkedIn. Fast forward then to last September. It was a Sunday evening. I was sitting at home, and I was on Facebook, and just seeing what was going on, and something caught my eye. I had 3 friends in different parts of the world who had all posted the very same missing persons message. Now, normally this is quite random, but for this, it just caught my eye, and I looked at it, and I'll be straight up. What it was a missing person. Someone had left the bar that Friday evening here in Melbourne, hadn't been seen since. So it was 48 hours later. And I didn't recognize the face, but all of a sudden I recognized, this is Brunswick. I know that girl, Jill Marr. 5 days later, the body of Jill Marr was found buried in a shallow grave on Black Hill Road, just north of Melbourne. She walked home that evening, short distance to the house. She'd been abducted on the way home. She'd been dragged into an alley, raped, strangled, and her body was put in the back of a boot before it was driven and left just at the side of buried in the side of a dirt road in Gisborne South. My speech today is an eye for an eye. An eye for an eye is essentially the principle that when a human being does damage to another person, that is penalised to the same degree in return. It's my view that once convicted, the vile, despicable, repulsive excuse for a human being that is Odhran Bailey should be summarily executed and suffer the same pain that Jill Marr suffered. It's more than 45 years since anyone was executed here in Melbourne. Ronald Ryan attempted to escape from Pembridge Prison in Coburg in 1965. As he tried to escape, he shot and he killed a local policeman. 2 years later, he was hung. There was a massive public outcry, and as a result of this, it was decided to abolish the death penalty. I propose today that in the case of Jill Marr, that such a penalty should be reintroduced, where it is so clear-cut as to who the perpetrator of this crime is, and I think it should carry forward if a similar incident is to happen down the line. Now, this is obviously a very emotive issue, and I think it's quite clear to say that there are legitimate arguments on both sides. I picked this though for 2 reasons. The first reason is that it's literally very much on our doorstep. Everybody knows of this case. It's touched people to various degrees for various reasons, whether it's the randomness of the attack, the fragility of life, and makes us question, for example, just how safe are we when we walk the streets of Melbourne. But the second reason I'm picking focuses really on why others think that, the second reason, it focuses on the anti-death penalty side, and it focuses on why they think that such a penalty is unjustifiable. And that belief centers around the fact that an innocent person who is put to death, whether it is by accident or whether it is through some sort of a flaw within the judicial system, that person obviously is not going to be brought back to life, and the sentence cannot be corrected. In the case of Odhran Bailey, though, I don't believe that there is a shadow of a doubt as to his guilt. The case is ongoing. I know that his defence are pointing to the fact that because of social media and because of the vilification he's been given, that there is really no chance that that man can be given a fair trial here in Melbourne. They use the term innocent until proven guilty, and it's a term I think we all agree on, and I think we all understand, we all agree upon. But in this instance, because personally I'm so sure of this man's guilt, that because of the most heinous crime that this man has committed, he should be killed. He should be he should be killed. The court case is in September, so I'm going to fast forward to September. And I think if this man is convicted, at that stage, really the question is, well, what is going to be the appropriate sentence that Bailey is going to get, and what form that should take? Again, I reiterate my point, an eye for an eye. For a crime as callous as what Bailey has done, he should be executed. Whether it's through hanging, whether it is through the electric chair, or whether it is through something as slow and as painful as what he imparted on Jill Maher, he should be. I think that the sooner his life is extinguished, the better. I don't think his loss will be felt. I believe that a harsh punishment such as this would be a major deterrent for future crimes. They say people fear nothing more than death, apart from public speaking. So the fear of death should be enough to deter a criminal knowing what will happen as a result of the crimes that he carries out. I think the idea of spending a life in prison is more palatable than death, and it's more, I think a criminal such as Bailey would prefer that to the noose around a neck, or knowing that they're to be strapped to a chair, knowing that these are going to be their final moments. Some people would say that the idea of the penalty is outdated, old-fashioned, and barbaric, but I want you to put yourselves into the shoes of Jill Maher on that evening. She left work on a Friday, met friends for a few drinks, made her way home. Something that everybody in this room has done on numerous occasions. She had the misfortune to come across the path of Odhran Bailey. And for the pain and suffering that he has put on her and has put on her family, he should be executed. Ultimately, I believe that the death penalty honours human dignity in that it treats the defendant as a free moral actor who has the destiny to decide, do they do ill in this world or do they do good? They're not treated like an animal with no moral sense. Bailey knew what he was doing and he was caught. He should suffer an eye for an eye. Thank you. Just with that, I think I have about 2 minutes just to open it up to questions with regards to the topic.
Mr. O'Brien, I believe what you're really saying is you'd rather this never happened again. Granted, this heinous crime, but how do you take into account things like wars? People are killed, and yet no one decides that they're going to take an eye for an eye. So how do you balance your moral judgments about war and death compared to individual murders?
Okay, in a way it's separate, in a way it's the same. I think you take the example. I don't fully agree with the point. I'll just point, for example, at Saddam Hussein. So Saddam Hussein went to a war court, and ultimately he was given the same decision as I'm proposing that Odhran Bailey gets. Admittedly, war is different. There's multiple casualties. This is a one-off. I think that and that's why I said whether it's the Jill Maher case, where I personally believe it's 100% solid. I think if the same thing happens with the deterrence, I think they should meet the same fate as what the victim had.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Brien, many
You can call me Oren.
It's not a political one. Before it is like last time. Many people would argue that people like Odhran Bailey have come from broken homes and in many ways have already suffered. And while I wouldn't disagree with them going to jail and getting punished and all that sort of thing, sometimes it's their only way of coping with life, and they just don't know what to do anymore. And you just want to put them to death. How do you justify that within the context of your argument?
Yeah, someone like Odhran, but it's. I know you say coming from a broken home, and I gave you the story earlier about how I went to this the citizenship ceremony last night. Paul Reeves from this company TeleChoice told us the story how in his childhood he went to 7 primary schools and 8 secondary schools. The reason being that he was brought up by a single mother. His single mother had very little money, and they were ultimately kicked out of every house that they went into. So they had to move to different parts of Melbourne until they realised that they had no money. They were kicked out and they'd moved somewhere else. So you could give the same case for someone like Paul Reeves coming from a broken home. But whereas he's gone up and set up a multi-million-dollar business, I don't think this guy is certifiably insane. He seems like to a degree, a fully functioning adult. And like what I said, he had the free moral sense to make a decision as he went home that evening. I don't know if anyone saw the case where he'd spent a lot of that time, I think he had an argument with his girlfriend. But he decided to go out and kill another individual, and I think he should suffer. I'll take one more question.
Aaron? I actually used to always agree with the death penalty. However, looking on the news in regards to America and seeing so many innocent people dying, and you can say that it is absolutely 100% that he is guilty. However, there is always that little bit of doubt. I was speaking to a policeman and he said to kill somebody, you're putting them out of the misery like that. If you were to put somebody in incarceration, such as jail for life, that would drive them more nuts. So instead of, personally, I believe, rather than sentencing them to death, I think it should be life in jail without parole if you kill somebody.
Adrian Bailey, if he is jailed for the rest of his life, is going to live in this is not like Midnight Express. He's going to live in relative comfort in this prison. It's an expensive process. I think it is, if I can say 110%, because this guy is, I don't think I've ever seen a case as where I can see someone as guilty as this man is. And I honestly think he should suffer, it just deserves. With that, I'd better move on because I know we're short for time. So thank you.
There you go.